this is called rapid fire, and this is where I have to talk very, very fast because we only have 20 minutes to do everything, and everybody gets 5 minutes. I have to talk like this or something like that. So the more I talk, the less time they get. So you have to listen rapidly as they talk rapidly. So what we're going to do is give you 5 people who get to talk about what they've done for 5 or 10 or 15 years in 5 minutes. And they have to really entertain you, but also stimulate you, and they've got to make their case in 5 minutes. Did I say 5 minutes? They have 5 minutes. So I'm losing their time rapidly. So the first person up is going to be Adrian Holovaty of EveryBlock. Adrian, are you there? Let's see how fast you can run. Great. Welcome, Adrian.
Hi, everybody. I'm Adrian from EveryBlock, and I'm going to be talking about my site, EveryBlock, and I want to give you a couple of takeaways from the perspective of a consumer of government data. Do we have slides there? Okay. So EveryBlock is a local news website with sort of a weird twist. What we take is a geographic approach. So you go to the site and enter your address, street address, if you're in one of our 15 cities, and you see all the news directly around you within sort of 1 or 3 or 8 blocks around your house. You can sort of bubble up to the zip code level if you want to get a slightly bigger view, or you can bubble up to a neighborhood level, or as of a couple days ago, you can actually draw an arbitrary area on a map. Here, for example, is the area right around this hotel, which after the fact I realized looked like an elephant, which I swear isn't supposed to represent anything. So once you specify your area of interest, you can get a feed of everything that we know about that's happening in that area. So for example, you might see everything that's been covered in the media that happened to reference something in your immediate neighborhood. But more importantly for this audience, you see a whole bunch of public records that are immediately applicable to your immediate area. So for instance, you might see crime in your neighborhood. A prior project to this was a site that I made called chicagocrime.org, so this is sort of a descendant of that. You might see things like building permits, so answering the question, why does my neighbor have a big crane in his backyard? Why is there a big bulldozer, down the street from me? You can see business licenses, which new businesses have just applied for licenses in your neighborhood, and things like property transfers. These are just a couple of examples, but dozens and dozens of different types of public records, all at the city block level. So we're very much in the municipal side of things, not as much the federal side of things. So we've been doing this for 2 years, and I wanted to give you a couple of takeaways because it's not every day that I get to talk to government data providers on such a sort of mass scale. We get data in 2 ways. One is by going to City Hall, this being City Hall in Chicago where we're based, and secondly by screen scraping it from various government websites. And both have sort of different pluses and minuses. So 4 takeaways for government data providers. One, we sort of tend to think of open government data as an all-in, sort of all or nothing kind of thing. But when it comes to EveryBlock, we sort of take what we can get. And when we're talking to a government official, if that government agency doesn't have the resources to open up data to us or to the public or to anyone, we're okay with them making some slight tweaks to their website so that it's easy for us to scrape. And that actually has been quite a successful strategy for us in many cases. So a quick example here is this is the City of Chicago Business License Holders Search, which gives you a fresh dump of every business license in the city updated throughout the day. It's very, very hard to scrape, though, because all of the information isn't available on that list. You have to follow all sorts of links. And with a little tiny tweak, you can make that much more easily scrapable by making, for instance, a date search so that on the scraper side of things, we can get just the data that we want. We don't have to scrape every single thing. That sort of leads me to my second point, which is diffs, not dumps. A lot of agencies think of just giving a raw dump of all the data. Here's every building permit since our system was initiated in 2002. But for a site like ours, which is news-focused, We want what's new. So I wanted to sort of plant that seed of diffs, not necessarily just dumps. Third thing, which was referenced earlier today, PDFs are not machine readable. A lot of well-intentioned government agency people say, oh, well, it's readable on a computer, it's digital. No, PDFs are like the devil's spawn. And finally, something that is really important that not a lot of people think about is describe the data. So here's a Seattle fire information, and it's very obscure. It was celebrated for being available, but it doesn't make any sense. So we actually have a full-time guy who describes the information, and if only government agencies could actually describe what they're giving, that'd be super great for folks like us. Thank you very much. My time is up.
I want to thank Adrian for that ringing endorsement of Adobe. Our next presenter is a really great old friend and colleague from Department of Energy and previously the CIA, the head of the Global Futures Forum, Carol Dumaine.
We live in an age of consequences that remain largely unexamined insofar as they relate to energy and environmental security. This is because energy and environmental impacts have not traditionally been considered security issues. The climate crisis alone contains the potential for catastrophic impacts on water and food security and rising temperatures and sea levels. Although these issues are thoroughly integrated, the institutions meant to tackle them are not. We have to consider what are the things that we least expect and plan for those. During the Cold War, we spared no effort in preparing for high-impact, low-probability events such as a surprise nuclear attack. Today, we're less invested in contingency planning on energy and environmental issues, such as a catastrophic acceleration of ice sheet discharge that could lead to rapid sea level rise. This image of the allegory of Plato's cave captures our challenge, with people fixed and able to see only shadows of reality, captures our challenge in understanding new security realities. And foresight and warning is actually about escaping the cave and immersing ourselves in all that we do not understand, because it's sometimes difficult to see what the issues of emerging significance are because of those shadows of present-day concerns affecting our vision. In this regard, for example, it's important to consider demographic considerations. What are the implications of the expected population rise of over 9 billion in 40 years' time? We need to consider the consequences of such developments as the melting of glacial ice on the Tibetan plateaus, the incidence of wheat stem rust affecting wheat in parts of the Middle East, and also the implications of extreme weather events for energy infrastructure and fuel production capacity. Our work to date has emphasized that climate change will not be benign, uniform, or gradual. Under these conditions, resiliency and preparedness are paramount. But governments lack knowledge of how energy and environmental dynamics affect security. There are many underlying currents of change. We can think of them as seismic forces beneath a quiet volcano. What underlying forces are we not thinking about? What underlying forces are we not thinking about? Probably a great many. Many of these are global problems whose effects multiply quickly and unpredictably in a complex system, like a power outage. Melting polar ice is the proverbial canary in the coal mine of planetary health. In the last few years alone, the most respected developments not anticipated by the world's most respected climate change scientists have occurred, including faster than expected ice melting. Drought, food, water scarcity, and conflict do not happen in isolation. They reinforce each other in nonlinear, unexpected ways, and their interconnectedness can lead to widespread systems failures. Imagine for a moment if you didn't know what a red light meant at an intersection. What's our equivalent for understanding the visual symbols of energy and environmental changes? We're working to develop new capacities for a globally interdependent world, creating new communities of strategic insight and expertise, working to translate the best of science into security-related consequences and opportunities. Earlier this year, President Obama said we need to understand the world as it is to develop the capacities that we need to confront emerging danger and to act with purpose and pragmatism to turn this moment of peril into one of promise. There is structure beneath the chaos. Our work requires developing new capacities for a radically changed security paradigm, the outlines of which are not yet clear. These challenges must be considered through a global lens, which is not the usual perspective of a traditional national security organization. They require new capacities for connecting across boundaries, generational, organizational, national, and disciplinary. Another area of focus for us is the challenge of communicating about the risks of abrupt change in systems. Inputs to risk models tend to be based on past experience and can lead to a false sense of security about the future, as this Taleb's example of a turkey's abrupt ending shows us. It's what we least expect that can be most threatening to our national and global security. So diversity of participation in government and non-government partnerships is key to resiliency. So in response to this, we're launching an international online peer-to-peer forum complementing face-to-face meetings, which we call an ecosystem because of the diversity of participation. I hope our vision of a global foresight commons is large enough to match the scale of the challenges we're facing today. Thank you.
I was pretty depressed there for a minute. I'm glad she ended on a high note. I got to talk fast. Scott Heiferman is our next presenter, and you may know him better as Mr. Meetup, the guy who brought you Meetup, which has resulted in an awful lot of social change and political change. And Scott's going to tell us a little bit more about that. Scott.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Let's big thanks to the O'Reilly folks for putting on a great show so far. So I want to talk today, when my slides come up, about the biggest opportunity, I think, for high government leverage opportunity. And that has everything to do with this guy. This is Ronnie James Dio, but I'm not talking about Dio, the heavy metal superstar. I'm talking about Dio as in the spirit of do it ourselves. Not DIY, but DIO. De Tocqueville said, French dude a century or two ago said, in democratic countries, the knowledge of how to combine is the mother of all forms of knowledge. So government as a platform for connecting people with this greatest organizing tool in history, that being the internet, has just enormous untapped potential so far. So for an example, what if the SBA connected small business people locally to support each other? So, not just provide information and have top-down events, but enable people to meet up locally and help each other, support each other with small businesses. That is, we advance the slide here. That's actually what's happening with, there are thousands of small business and entrepreneur meetups right now across the country. They are like, for example, here in Minnesota, they're saying, let's help each other out with our small businesses. Let's connect for a better future in another town. Just yesterday in Greenpoint, Brooklyn, someone started the Greenpoint Merchants Association. This is a Chamber of Commerce for the 21st century, reinventing civil society. But beyond business, people use that word let's a lot. So I'm going to fly through some use of that word. There in London, they're saying, let's develop something cool together at the Java meetup. Let's make a movie together at the Cary, North Carolina meetup there. Let's clean up the beach in Boston. Let's talk MS in Pennsylvania. Let's beat cancer. Let's jump out of a perfectly good airplane at the Tampa skydiving meetup. Let's go green with sustainable aquaponics in Riverside, California, whatever that is. And just yesterday, also in London, someone started a let's build an open source car meetup. Isn't that great? Isn't this stuff like, this is such exciting things when people self-organize and really grasp that potential and that power to do things together. In Ann Arbor, Michigan, they're trying to create an alternative currency in this meetup. They're using the word LETS, but as an acronym, Let's Exchange Transaction System. In Orlando, they have Ourlando. They're trying to make Orlando better. What's really interesting is when people get together not around a civic purpose, but then it turns into a civic purpose. So an example of that is the Triangle, North Carolina mountain biking meetup, where they've now said our mission is to preserve North Carolina natural resources, in addition to their biking. In Augusta, Georgia, they're like grabbing it. They're doing it DO style and saying, we're going to install bike racks on the buses ourselves. They're doing that. So this is what happens when people can self-organize local groups. Participation means lending your hands, not just your voices, because organizing isn't just to act against, but to barn raise, to make stuff, to do stuff, to really roll up your sleeves and do it DO style and address education and energy, environment, health, and business issues, etc. So a little minute of Meetup background. We got started a few years ago. Lots of politicians were using Meetup. This guy on the screen used it. Look how young his kids were. And on the lower left is how they tried to spark meetups across Illinois. Quietly, since then, through all the hubbub of social networking and everything, Meetup keeps growing and growing and growing. 5 quick notes about us. 1, it's about using the internet to get off the internet. Meetup groups. If you think about having people organize events, don't think just events. Think about groups, sustainable, built-to-last groups. And having people with roles, not people as audience. Today, there's thousands of meetups happening every day. Faster than ever, it's growing. The meetup groups are getting 1 million new members every 6 weeks, not 7 weeks there now. We're profitable as of last month. And the goal, the dream, is a meetup everywhere about most everything, so that there's a local community group there when you need it, within miles and within days. Wouldn't that be great? If there was that welcoming, friendly group of people that you can go to when you're diagnosed with something, when you're interested in something, when you want to do something. So this is about capacity building. And the people behind these meetups are developers, as Steve Ballmer would say. But here, they're not engineers. They're regular people. So think about making platforms where anyone can be a developer. A group, in this case, is an app. So app development for the rest of us. They can make these groups. Killer apps drive platform adoption. Imagine everyone part of a local community group committed to making something better. So last couple quick slides here. It's nice to have followers on Facebook and Twitter, but is there more that they can do? Get people to talk amongst themselves and really spark citizen-to-citizen action, because that has infinite scale and potential. Do it DO style. And lastly, the most powerful thing you could do is to spark a movement by getting people to organize, self-organize local meetup groups, because you have more power than ever. If you're talking to people, if you have some connection to the people, you have more power than ever to unleash that potential of self-organized local groups. Thank you.
Now, Peter Corbett. Many of you may know Peter and his work at iStrategyLabs, but also really well known for working with Vivek Kundra on creating apps for democracy. So we're really pleased to have him with us today. Peter.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm going to talk really fast because there's a short amount of time. So I'm Peter Corbett. I'm the CEO of iStrategyLabs. You can find me, Corbett3000, on Twitter. Really passionate about doing things smarter, better, faster, cheaper. I'm not really sure why. It's just something that I'm really into. Maybe it's because I'm a total geek, but that's something we share together. One of those things that we figured out to do smarter, better, faster, cheaper was developing IT infrastructure for the DC government through something called Apps for Democracy. The quick backstory: when Vivek was the CTO of DC, he said we needed a better way to make our massive data catalog more useful for the citizens, visitors, and businesses of DC. And that catalog has somewhere around, I think, 240 data feeds, everything from real-time crime information, school test scores, juvenile arrests, Hansen service requests, etc. So he said, well, what would you do? And I said, well, there's that 1.0 way. It's the way it's done now. You find a big contractor, you do a big RFP, it takes a couple of years, it takes a lot of money. But there's probably a better way. And that better way would be, what if we took open data, combined it with open source technology, added citizen talent, and incentivized them with a little bit of fame and fortune to see what would result. That fame and fortune piece, the first time around last year, we had a press conference with the mayor, a lot of buzz generated in the blogs and in different media, and about $20,000 in a prize pool. This past year, we had $35,000 similarly. So that first year, 47 web, iPhone, Facebook apps created at an estimated value of $2.3 million to the city, costing them $50,000, which is somewhere around a 4,000% ROI. iPhone apps for, based on your geolocation, finding the next trains coming in and out of DC, finding a better place to catch the metro, marinas, libraries, gas stations, etc. iLive.at won a gold medal, which kind of centers the world around you, shows you whether or not there's been recent homicides, sexual abuses, robberies, but it also shows you where the nearby hospitals are, police stations, etc. And also correlates census data to show you a little bit of the composition of that neighborhood. So if you're going to move, you can say, well, I want a neighborhood with a lot of single people in it or a lot of married people because I like to, mingle with people who have a similar lifestyle to me. Subsequent innovation spawned off of this contest. So the developers who built iLive.at went on to build something called Are You Safe DC, which is also Are You Safe Sacramento and a number of other cities. Basically, on your iPhone, you can see whether or not you've walked into an area that has a little bit different threat level. Right, so you can see on the right, these are actually screenshots from my phone when I had my car towed a little while back, and it got progressively worse as I walked, so I kept, classic moment. I wonder if I'm safe. I've got an app for that. Sort of silly. Anyway, also Stumble Safely, which is really interesting, creates a heat map of liquor licenses in the district and correlates crime data with those liquor licenses, and as you can see, there's a correlation. The MPD actually enjoyed that app and thought it was interesting to see the city map that way. Park at DC, everyone I think can relate to, if you're a DC denizen, the challenge of finding places to park, but also broken parking meters. So this map, the big black meters are broken parking meters. What we found was that the average time it took to fix a meter was about 6 days, and the contract with the city for that vendor is supposed to be 24 hours. So when you do data correlation, you start to map it, you start to see, well, who's actually underperforming? Who do we call? So Chris Willey is the interim CTO of DC, and he picked up the mantle, picked up the torch to run this community edition that we just wrapped up. They wanted to build the world's first Open 311 API and have applications developed by citizens based on that. So we reached out to the community, listened to what they had to say. There were some around 5,500 votes in this system. A lot of interesting things. If you go to insights.appsfordemocracy.org, you'll see that. So the winners of this competition, we just announced on Friday, an iPhone plus Facebook plus web application for submitting service requests to the city. So if you go to the iPhone App Store, type DC311, you can download this app today. This is a quick screenshot of if you're submitting a pothole to the city. So you hit your GPS location, you take a picture of it, snap the photo, that's the pothole. People are really passionate about potholes, actually, and that's why we keep referencing it. And then there's a Facebook app, and I think a really interesting thing about this is socializing city services. So we feel like, I want to be a part of this leaderboard. I'm the guy that's submitting the most potholes. Why? I don't know. It's a little psychological trick, but how do you get citizens engaged in their government? So I'm number 7 here right now. I'm gunning for number 1. Anyway, and Fix My City DC is that web app piece that is a really slick Ruby on Rails application for doing app requests to the city. So all this stuff is being implemented by the city to be a citizen-developed Open 311 system that will replace Motorola's system by, I think, at the end of the month. And I'm running out of time here. So where's all this stuff going? Apps for Democracy is happening in a number of places. The idea is if we have open data standards on a municipal level, an app gets built once, spreads everywhere, and there's an open application ecology that we all can benefit from. So these app contests happen. The greatest ones go into an app ecology. They're gardened, and they're popped out to other municipalities. Thank you.
And now we finish off with Michael Tiemann, the Vice President of Open Source Affairs at Red Hat. And we thought it was appropriate, since he's talked a lot about sunsetting of legislation, to have him sunset the rapid fire. Michael.
All right, so I'm going to talk today about how the information technology, let's see, have we got some slides on the monitor? My time is going, but my slides are not. That's not fair. Okay, here we go. So, next slide. We should be living in an economic paradise because Moore's law, fiber law, and disk law are giving us exponential performance gains, and these benefits of information technology should give us benefits throughout the rest of what we do. And yet, we're living in an economic paradise lost because there has been no Moore's law for software. While hardware is getting better, faster, and cheaper, software is getting worse, more expensive, less reliable, and the result of the totality of the system has been a failure. Now, Albert Einstein tells us that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But we have taken insanity to a new level in information technology. We have taken it to the level of insanity times 10 to the power of 12. Global ICT spending is over $3 trillion a year, and throughout many decades, we have seen a waste of about 30% of all information technology spend. Today, we're wasting over $1 trillion a year on bad software. Now, bad software is not new. Fred Brooks wrote about this problem in the Mythical Man Month, describing a situation from the 60s. There are companies out there who develop bad software as a competitive strategy. So, are we insane or thinking like sheep? Maybe we should start thinking like farmers. Michael Pollan remixed Wendell Berry to talk about the difference between the industrial model of agriculture and the sustainable model of agriculture, and I find this has something to do with software. What's wrong with the industrial software model? Well, it doesn't work. That's been documented since the beginning, and the quality output of proprietary software is 20 to 30 defects per 1,000 lines of code, which is just insane. But the worst problem is costs are externalized. And what that means is the money you are wasting is reported as record profits by the software industry. That is ridiculous. We need to look at the whole system. So looking at the system, what's great about sustainable? We know about the idea of thinking 7 generations into the future. 7 generations of Moore's law, 7 generations of fiber law is easily within a career lifetime. So knowing that, we should be making excellent choices, not insane ones. But the best thing about the sustainable model, which comes from the omnivore's dilemma, is that the animals do most of the work. Now, what about those open source animals? When the quality of the Linux kernel was measured in 2004, we were producing code that was more than 100 times lower in defect density than proprietary software. The next year, it measured even better. And when they expanded the aperture, they found that the worst part of the LAMP stack was still 40 times better than proprietary software. Now, sustainable software is software which, no matter what you do, you make the whole system better. Eric Raymond says it's a developer scratching an itch. Now, we have documented now that open source has achieved Moore's law for software. We started with a better quality level, 100 times better, and we're making it even better every year. Moreover, the functionality of open source is doubling every 12.5 months. How do we make this work for you? We need a new business model that recognizes the organic nature of software, that software bits should be free to read, modify, and share, and that the value comes from services delivered. Now, this idea of combining being the mother of all innovation, look what Intel says about their business model. Incorporate discrete components and integrate them into a single new device and then give them back for free. That concept of distributing the combined whole is radical. In open source, rather than configuring property around exclusion the traditional way, we should configure property around distribution. We should make liberal technology available. So the way we end the insanity, to sort of paraphrase and shorten Deming, is number one, use freedom of choice to not do the same thing over and over again and waste another $1 trillion a year. Have a system where you can improve the quality constantly and forever. When you're looking at procurement, the question ultimately should be, what's the exit cost? If software costs nothing to acquire, it costs nothing to retire, and that opens up innovation. So, we know the dangers of Ponzi schemes in the financial world, but in the technology world, we're living in that same kind of version. How many software vendors are selling licenses that have no actual value and demand ever-increasing amounts of new money to cover old promises never kept? A new organization standing up in Washington, D.C., Open Source for America, is not only advocating the importance of open source technologies in government, but also trying to ensure that users and developers can legally develop what you can improve. Thank you very much.